Evening and welcome to Gaming Under the Influence. I'm Mike and this is Alex coming to you from Green Dragon CVR in Woodbridge, Ontario, the only place you'll find 100 plus Ontario craft beers to purchase alongside the newest video game releases for 8th gen consoles. How you doing today, bud?
I'm doing well, Mike. How are you?
All right, I'm very good. You've been delving into Bloodborne, eh?
Definitely been getting into Bloodborne quite a bit after all this talk about Sekiro and us playing it and everything.
Very good. We're definitely going to compare those two games for you today, but first we'll tell you a little bit about what we're drinking. And today this is
let's hear it.
A Goza with Guava from Collective Arts. They just started making this again after initial release last summer, I believe, actually. Goza, we've tried it before for sure, a couple of different kinds, I think. It's a sour beer brewed with a bit of salt. I don't believe this one is dry hopped, and it's got a lot of guava in it. Definitely complements the sour taste and goes well with the hint of salt.
Very sour. This one's especially sour.
Yeah. It's delicious. Yeah. Check it out. I'm sure you can find it on the shelves of certain LCBOs in the province of Ontario, or order it off their website, or come in here to try it. Please do.
That's your best option. Come in here, play Sekiro, play Bloodborne, and drink beer.
Yeah, that's right.
And get really, really, really mad.
Yeah, right. Without further ado, we'll tell you a little bit about our thoughts on how Bloodborne and Sekiro stack up alongside one another. And Alex is going to take it away.
All right. In case any of you are unaware, we've been diving into Sekiro a lot, mostly Mike, less I. But while everybody in the media world has been focused on adding a easy mode for the poor saps who can't quite seem to get through the struggle, we've been hard at work conquering bosses and having a good time. Sometimes a very frustrating time, however, that I feel is a crucial part of the experience when playing a Fromsoft or a game. Or a Souls game, I guess. Anyways, this game has definitely reinvigorated our passion for these types of games, the struggle and all that comes with it. And we've decided, or mostly me, I've decided to dip back into Bloodborne, get a little bit of a taste for that sweet, sweet blood. So, Bloodborne takes place in a very dark Victorian setting with sprinkles of nightmare fuel laced all over it.
Yeah, it's definitely like based on the work. You ever hear that guy H.P. Lovecraft?
I actually bought one of his books. It was like a big collector's thing. Yeah. All his short stories or books were. Yeah, I know a lot of it's based on that. I haven't read it, but
it's like a whole genre of literature developed around, I guess, his kind of like archetypal themes called weird fiction about like the ultimate nature of reality being this like incomprehensible terror, and people like struggling to live in the wake of that. Yeah, that's the nightmare fuel you mentioned, I think.
I think you're right. That's
the element of nightmare fuel.
Absolutely. Yeah. As you progress through the game, the nightmare becomes more and more apparent with every further step taken into the twisted world of Bloodborne. It feels to me like it feels pretty unique in terms of a setting in a video game. I know some of the Dark Souls probably have similar settings, but for me, all of Bloodborne encompasses something that I feel is a little bit unique to the games.
Yeah, definitely. I think
most games, right?
Even with the Souls games, they're this Mercari book we referenced in our last video about Souls talks a lot about how they're a good homage to like dark Western fantasy, but their originality doesn't lie in the tropes and imagery that they employ, but rather in how they like subject those kind of like paint in a painting to a new picture, right? That's the genius of it. It's almost like an Eastern, like a Japanese interpretation of Western fantasy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
With all of the overtones that implies, which we're going to get into later, I think.
When
we talk about the themes.
Yeah, I feel like it all comes together and it sort of paints a beautiful picture. Your character literally being soaked in blood throughout the game, taking down enemies and bosses, right? It's just all so very cool.
Yeah, then in Sekiro too, when you kill a guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess hopefully I'll get there after I put down Bloodborne. I'm quite close to the end, but so I guess I wanted to focus a little bit on the combat being such a change from it came out in between 2 and 3, I believe, Bloodborne, right? Mm-hmm. And now, while you would have more experience than I do in terms of the Dark Souls games, from what I know, they've taken the combat a step up in terms of speed and fluidity in Bloodborne.
In comparison to the previous ones? I think so, yeah.
Right?
I think,
focusing more on dodging and
that's right,
quickly evading attacks as opposed to blocking or maybe parrying, which I know you never really did.
No, I was never very good at it. Most notably, they added that, I think the two biggest most notable changes were the introduction of that regain mechanic, where after taking damage for a short period, you could
That's right.
get the health back by attacking the enemy.
Yeah, that I would guess would contribute to speeding up the combat too.
It altered the tenor of the combat. Yeah, it made you, it made you want to be like, if you wanted to conserve what were now like finite healing items, it was obligatory to kind of remain close to the enemy and be aggressive. Yeah. And on the other hand, they also added that very noticeable difference to me was when you're locked on, your dodge mechanic changes to a sidestep.
That's
which
right.
I think is faster but has less iframes. I believe overall.
You might be right.
Don't quote me on that, but it's like more purposeful for dodging certain kinds of attacks.
Yeah, and I noticed after playing Sekiro and then going back to Bloodborne that when you're locked on to a character or to an enemy, you can't run.
You can't run in Sekiro?
I don't. No, in Bloodborne.
Oh, in Bloodborne, really?
You can't. Yeah, you can't sprint anymore. You can dodge. Yeah. So
little things.
But
Yeah.
Going from, I guess, the Dark Souls to the Bloodborne would be noticing that it's faster, and Sekiro took it even a step further. The fluidity and combat, the speed and everything in that game is phenomenal. I think like
so, yeah.
Demon Souls and Dark Souls, the combat more. I wouldn't even know as much as you, but the combat more focused on blocking and using a shield. I know you said you never did, but
it's at least a legitimate playstyle. Like
it is, right? Having a shield, parrying,
yeah.
blocking, you still had to dodge, but it was slower. It was a slower dodge mechanic, right?
Especially if you were loaded up gear-wise.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So
yeah, but it was a legitimate playstyle. Bloodborne totally removed that option. I think they even had that famous joke shield in there.
Yeah, that's right, the one shield. I heard it's actually not bad at deflecting bullets, but
true.
Aside from that, why would you use it when you could just equip another weapon, or it would take the place of your gun, I guess, which is also useful for parrying if you choose to do so anyway, so you don't need a shield. Yeah, that seemingly like they just totally removed.
Certain weapons are two-handed, right? You don't even...
Or that,
use
yeah.
the wigs, you don't two-handed.
What are two-handed weapons in Bloodborne?
Most of them have a two-handed mode, anyways.
Oh, that's right.
Not all of them. But
yeah, so if you, like in Ludwig's Blade, if you... or the saw cleaver or whatever. The Hunter Axe, I think, was the one I used most.
Kerman's scythe there. You get after,
Cool.
It's all very good stuff, yeah. I definitely appreciated that, obviously, having said that, maybe that wasn't the necessary way to play the Souls games, but it definitely was the beneficial way. Like, your skills were transferable from
that's how I always
mobs
started those games.
Yeah.
Just blocking a lot.
If you turtle, like, you have to sometimes dodge, and you're in a
right.
less advantageous position because you haven't spec'd for it stat-wise, you haven't practiced it on the trash mob, so I always found it better to just practice a more universally applicable skill in those games. And so I definitely appreciated that approach in Bloodborne. I liked it a lot. Some of the later game bosses, especially in the Chalice dungeons, like it becomes so fast. You like move 2 times a second. It's
I find that like
it's pretty intense.
The last fight against Gurman that I'm at right now is you need a minimum of 2 dodges.
Yeah,
just to block, just to evade.
Yeah. You dodge as fast as you block in Sekiro, essentially.
It's crazy. Yeah,
it's good. It's definitely fast in that regard. A lot of moving.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so I guess that brings us back to Sekiro again, saying that the combat has been further progressed to be even faster and more fluid, which I'm assuming you would agree. Absolutely.
I think so. Yeah.
It's probably the fastest in the series, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
it has to be. So has to be with the inclusion of that. So I guess the posture bar, right?
Yeah, they included a posture meter. Essentially, they took the stamina bar away, so now the efficacy of your attacks is not measured by,
stamina bar,
how efficiently you are.
That makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I think it makes a huge difference.
Oh,
You're no longer concerned with defensively, like, conserving some stamina to respond to an attack, and rather your defensive maneuvers now have some offensive capacity as well, because when you deflect enough, it fills up posture meter that you can use to execute the enemy when it's full, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't work on all bosses. Some have posture meters roughly equivalent to their health bar, so you have to chip away at their health like they bull.
Yeah, for bosses, I noticed it seemed almost the same. Like
some are definitely heavy posture guys.
Yeah.
Some you fight like normal enemies, but some you have to chip away at their health.
You have to do okay.
But that's a very interesting mechanic. I like it because in previous games, like, if both options are purely defensive, it makes sense to use one that is universally applicable, like the dodge versus the shield. But here, like, your defense is almost always applicable. There's always a counter to every attack that is both defensive and offensive.
Right.
Whether it be that thrust counter, the jump kick, or just main line deflex, right?
Right.
Or just tools that are situationally applicable to counter terror or fire or whatever. There's always a hard counter to something, which I like. I like that now there's this more integrated approach to defense, where you don't have to retreat and stop attacking.
Yeah, exactly.
It's incorporated.
It feels
into
more natural, right?
Yeah.
Like as much as I love Bloodborne, one of my favorite games, but it definitely feels like the posture bar, whether it's a replacement or not for the stamina meter, is
kind of like an inverse replacement.
Kind of is,
better,
right?
Yeah.
It seems like to me anyway, it seems like the better option, because I notice even in Bloodborne, when you run a stamina, it's not a good time. It's not fun managing that.
Sure,
and it seems kind of silly at this point.
Forces you to drop points into a stat.
Yeah, that's stupid, because
I definitely don't think it's necessary. I definitely prefer the streamlined approach Sekiro
yeah, right?
has adopted in that regard.
I think the posture thing is much better.
But like
it fits the theme of the games very well. I think in terms of
the clashing of swords.
Exactly. That's
right?
That's what I was getting at.
I think from the very beginning, like, these kinds of considerations show that just like any other art form, there's iteration in gaming, especially in games made by the same people in the same family of games, right? Like from Demon Souls to Dark Souls to Bloodborne to Dark Souls again, and now to Sekiro. There's even if thematically there's a core of the game and even a gameplay core that retains its identity, in mechanical aspects there's always improvements. It's very important, right? They always adopt.
They've been improving
technologies of the year they're publishing in, and the advice of players regarding the matter, not the intent or form of their game, to make it better, which is good. I think it should be that way. But I also think that what defines the Souls games for me, it makes them such a powerful draw, is their thematic core, like that persists like intact, even when these more superficial systems, the more tangible systems, are altered and improve. I don't believe there could be improvement on the themes, the more fundamental universal things, the idea.
It's hard to think of how they could incorporate that better.
That's why I think that consistency is important. And in our previous Sekiro video, we talked about we touched on this theme of the indigence. There's an indignity to being a creature. Like when you change or are perfected, and you lose something of yourself. It's a fundamental fact of reality, and it's also a fundamental thing that all of the Souls games and games in the Souls family alike strive to exhibit. Whether mankind be afflicted by a hollow curse, or be the inhabitants of a nightmare, or afflicted by like a parasite that renders them.
Where's Dragon Rot fit?
Dragon Rot fits into this too. Exactly the same kind of thing. Afflicted by like an involuntary immortality that kind of shackles them to this like a condition of despair. Like in all of these cases, and I think Souls games strive to present, firstly, that reality is such that there's a indignity to being a creature. That change and progress require a stripping of the self, and in some sense a digestion of the self, and no matter how hard we strive to rekindle the flame, or to transcend that condition by our own volition, or to, like Mikolash, commune with the great ones and become more than ourselves, the results will only ever be that like cancerous brain you find in the bottom of the Nightmare of Mensis, or the corrupted monk in Sekiro with a giant worm springing out of his head, or the beasts in Bloodborne, or the celestial children in Bloodborne, or King Allant in Demon Souls. The recurrent theme in all of these games is that there's this indigence, this indignity to creaturely being, and people want more than anything to transcend it, but their efforts and their attempts to do so are often misguided. The path they seek is sometimes too prideful or too negligent of the self, even, such that, like the two examples in Bloodborne, people either turn into beasts, like they totally lose their intelligence, or they become like just giant slugs with eyes on the inside of their heads, like totally disconnected from their brains, right?
With the winter lanterns.
Rather than merely like extinguishing the fire or kindling it again, like most of the games recommend, some like middle course that involves transcending the human condition, but not by its own terms. Not trying to make it into something more than it is in itself, right? More bowing to the nature of reality rather than trying to shape it into what you wish it would be, and kind of like what the gameplay systems reinforce, right? How you are forced to learn and adapt to what is before you, and to progress along with the terms of the game, and not with how you want it to be.
Right. Which one of the games did you say was Extinguish the Flame, or you said that was 2?
Dark Souls 1, you have the option to extinguish the flame or to kindle it, and same in number 2. But in number 3, you have the option to do a third thing. To become the Lord of Hollows.
So, like going through the games in numbered order, would you say that how we're saying the theme remains the same throughout them, but have they taken steps further in terms of like Bloodborne, how you were saying You could be
like in articulating how people can respond to that. I think definitely like there's more
like
subtlety
they've sort
in
of
the options available to you. Yeah,
but like
certainly.
but they've sort of made it.
Because at least in Demon's Souls 1, they didn't propose like a solution to the problem that I just described. So, right. Your only options are to be a nihilist or to be some kind of like, to entertain some kind of false hope. But
right.
Dark Souls 3 proposes, I guess, at the conclusion of the whole
option,
thing.
Right.
In Demon's Souls, though, they even had this like notion that, like in Demon's Souls, people using these things called soul arts precipitates like the rise of this demon army and this guy called the Great One. People trying to use magic to make themselves better, essentially turns them into demons. And at the end, you can become this like luminary and like kind of extinguish soul arts, or you can let the demon plague like be carried to its like conclusion. And so again, there's no option to really like settle this contradiction. But in Dark Souls 3 and in Bloodborne and in Sekiro, I guess thematically there is like more acuteness to the theme. Like it's not like it's altered, but again, just like in terms of the gameplay mechanisms, there is more specificity to it. It's been like rendered more explicit over time. I think that's what you call true progress, not a transformation, not like a radical transformation, but rather rendering something implicit, explicit, like taking an unfinished sculpture and adding better
sort of like building on the idea, right?
Making
fleshing
it
out a little bit more,
fleshing it out,
making
it a better version of itself.
That's awesome, man. I think I'm a fan of the idea of abandoning any and all plans we had for this channel and just doing a
Souls channel. Me too. Yeah,
just starting Demon's Souls or doing Dark Souls 2.
Me too.
Whatever it may be.
Yeah, fundamentally, like
games,
I think you could just like map the whole series thematically onto that binary, right? Like it starts with the fact that the condition that people live in is indignant. There's something wrong with it. It's a dream. It's somehow a curse, a hollow curse. It's like a worm living inside of you, and it's required of us that we transcend this condition. But when we start to think of answers, we go awry, like with Blood and Insight and Bloodborne again, with soul arts and Demon's Souls, with kindling or extinguishing the fire in Dark Souls, or with the dragon's blood, and it doesn't belong in Japan, they say in Sekiro, but people have taken it for themselves. Look what's happened to them, right? Like that exact kind of thing. It's like Promethean like concept of man like taking fire from the gods and it being his like undoing. Yeah,
that's intense.
Some heavy mythological stuff. I'm super down for Souls for this reason, right? Like has a very simple mythic theme, but it's powerful and it lends itself to so many different I guess exterior trappings, right? You could articulate it in Japanese mythology and 16th century Sengoku culture, or you could articulate it in Lovecraftian fiction or Western fantasy tropes, and it's equally powerful.
Yeah, it's insane to me thinking like how the games are so well made that you could play through the whole game and not even think about any of this stuff, and you'll still have a good time. I mean, you'll have a bad time because it's hard, but once you get over that, you'll enjoy it. They're very well made games, and then there's all this stuff on top of it, like the craziness and the themes.
I think so, yeah.
Like you were describing, like I feel like I need to read those Dark Souls books you have.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. You would enjoy it. I think anybody who's a fan of the series should definitely check them out. We'll put a link to them in the video.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're wicked. Yeah.
I feel like that would help me like sort of grasp it all because there's so much there, especially with Bloodborne. I remember watching videos and reading about. There's just so much lore in the background, right? Just hiding behind the scenes of like a fantastic,
I think this is the reason why we said in our previous Sekiro video that, at least in my opinion, the game's exceptionally good art. Like this opacity, it evinces its gratuitousness, its indifference, that it exists for its own sake. Yeah. Everything in the game is there for the good of the game. It's just a world you're wandering through. It doesn't exist for you. You have no entitlement to it.
No.
It adds life to the thing, to the created form. It's good art for that reason. It exists according to its own logic, born in the mind of its creator, and it doesn't tolerate any external influences that would shape it for any other good. Again, be they business considerations or accessibility or whatever
easy mode.
Kind of examples we could come up with these days. People are chattering about, my God, you hear the silliest things. Well, let's not get into that.
I don't know. I think we'll put toxic masculinity on the back burner this time.
Let's see. We'll find an opportunity. It's not over yet.
That's true.
Yeah.
Still time.
And I think thematically, like we can see the theme come to a head in both games, respectively, at their climax in the Nightmare of Mensis and the Fountainhead Palace, where you kind of meet the formal cause of all of the stuff going on around you earlier in the game. That being, the ritual that summoned the Blood Moon and Bloodborne, and in the case of Sekiro, the dragon's blood taken from the divine dragon in the palace there. He's missing an arm, like you can see. It was, I don't know if it was forcibly or not, which would be an even bigger connection, you know, if people had taken blood from the dragon, kind of like how
Like
they took blood from the Orphan of Kos.
Yeah.
But in all cases, this Promethean metaphor, like people trying to transcend the human condition on its own terms and ineffectually, therefore, you know.
Is that how you would boil it down?
I think that's how you boil it
Yeah.
down.
Like just
What you
transcending
fight
the
in all the
human
games
condition?
is people trying to transcend the human condition on its own terms.
Right.
Which is never going to be effective.
No.
And the game proposes some other measure, you know. Yeah. At least in Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, and Sekiro, it seems like. Yeah.
Okay, so
The notion of-
gameplay-wise, sorry.
No.
I was just gonna ask, like gameplay-wise, like if I wanted to break it down instead and ask you, like gameplay-wise, which game do you like better?
I definitely
Sekiro?
think like each one has gotten better gameplay-wise.
Yeah.
Every time, 100%.
And then
time.
in terms of like the story, the theme,
I definitely like Bloodborne the best because
You
I have
like
a
the
soft spot
visual
for,
stuff,
like,
yeah.
weird fiction and like
that's one thing
alien
for me.
gods and stuff like
yeah,
that. Yeah,
and
that's
Blood-
my favorite. Like if you look at the bookshelf over there, the kind of books you'll find is like mostly that kind of stuff.
Mostly the
I definitely like that, but I'm definitely stoked on like the culture and mythology of pretty much
Sekiro as
all
well.
of Sekiro
Or all
too.
of them, yeah.
Of all people, really. It's all there's badass shit to be found pretty much everywhere, man. And the Japanese history and mythology is pretty fucking sick.
yeah, like
too.
I feel like I like
Yeah.
the setting and all that stuff. Both Sekiro.
It got me to break out books on like Zen Buddhism by this guy Suzuki, this Japanese
Really?
scholar who died not that long ago, that I hadn't read since university. I just wanted to, you know, parse better like the themes
Yeah,
and mythology of the
refamiliarize
game.
yourself with it. That's cool.
That's how, you know, how well done, how clear and brilliant the form shining in the matter of these games is, right? Like it really captivates you. Yeah, you were saying that the Reddit communities are always active, even years after the game
absolutely,
came out.
yeah.
I was saying they're wiki-based games. Like it feels like, and I know in the books we just referenced, the developers talk about the fact that they're aware that it's a very much community-based game, not in how you play it from moment to moment, but in how you know, digest it. I guess how you learn about
Yeah.
the systems, how you
People
progress.
speculate on things. They
Yeah, you
come
learn
up
the
with
story. It's a
theories.
collaborative effort, yeah.
they you know, you share it.
It's very cool because on the one hand it's a single-player game, but it's not at all like a single-player game outside of the game. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's a community thing. Oh man,
It really is a unique. It has its own unique place in the.
people get fired up about that.
Oh yeah.
It can-
Absolutely, man. I'm gonna go with. I have to say, like, I do acknowledge that Sekiro is faster. I think the combat system is refined and better than Bloodborne. I right now feel like I like Bloodborne a little bit better, and that's why I jumped back into it. But once I finish that, which I'm pretty much at the end, I'm gonna dive back into Sekiro and see going through, because obviously I feel like I need to get through it before I can, you know, really say whether I like one or the other.
Do you think it's a fair assessment that you could say that pretty objectively, mechanically, all of the games have been better than the previous entries, but
That I 100%
thematically, like
agree.
fictionally, you know, based on what's before you, like the tropes and the themes and the aesthetic, like that's a matter of preference. What else would you call it, right? Like some people like medieval, like European
Yeah, exactly.
imagery better than
It's sort of like the
Japanese,
same thing, just you're
Yeah.
comparing the setting, which, like you even said,
That's a matter
Bloodborne.
of
I like the
preference
setting
to
of
my mind,
Bloodborne
yeah.
as well.
There's no way to quantify which one of those is better than the other, whereas mechanically you can say,
But
like, this is an
mechanically, yeah.
objective improvement, right?
Absolutely, Sekiro is a definite.
I think that's a fair
improvement.
assessment
Yeah.
of the From Software games since
Absolutely.
since Demon Souls
Since Demon
generally.
Souls, yeah.
But I also think it's a course of progress that anybody making a sequel or an iterative game should take into account in their development process. Like that's how things should proceed, right? Like you should take what's good in something, you should retain and perfect it,
Yeah.
whilst not being afraid to throw away the parts that don't serve any real artistic purpose, like a stamina bar. Like I don't care about that, right?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to admit that, you know, your work wasn't perfect before, and it's matter.
No, exactly.
Whilst you
And-
can say like the form is perfect and infallible in its own right, it doesn't need to be changed, even if it can be better expressed.
It's kind of weird. It goes back to the first time we talked about it when we were saying that they were stripping away all the RPG elements, whereas they didn't. They just kind
They're
of
there, they're
refined
just
them.
refined,
Yeah,
yeah,
they
they're not so
disguised them, like
obtrusive,
you
yeah.
said. It's
Your
it's
progress
weird, right?
is more measured. You beat a boss, you get more strength. I like that. Yeah.
It feels more substantial, the upgrades you get, like instead of very minute, like every time you get an upgrade in Bloodborne or whatever, and or you level up in Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Bloodborne, whatever, it's all very slow and very minor, right? Whereas, like you said, it's more impactful
I think
in
so.
Sekiro, right?
It also allows them, like, based on the fact that they know players are only going to play the boss in this or that way, they can design a boss encounter without as many variables, leading to a more formless experience, right?
Yeah.
Like it's good that they have a specific way for you to do it, specific way for you to respond, and
Yeah.
it'll be perfect as what it is. It doesn't need to take into account so many possible approaches. Like, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. There is a place for that, not to deny its place in games generally, but in these games, like, I think I prefer this more focused approach to everything.
I think I would like to see their next game
more
sort
named
of build
characters,
upon
more like specific
that.
combat styles.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could do without all those the RPG bloat.
I think the next game's going to be Bloodborne 2,
Possible.
Sekiro 2, Dark Souls 4,
Probably not Dark
Demon
Souls
Souls 2, or just the new thing.
I don't know. I would be happy
Tough
with
to
any
say,
of those
right?
except for Dark Souls 4.
I would love to see Bloodborne 2.
Yeah. me
Personally,
too.
I would love to see.
It has to be
Bloodborne.
done.
Just like on the PS.
I doubt they're going to put it out before PS5 though.
Yeah,
we
that
would have
was-
heard about it
that
already.
was what I was gonna say. Maybe on the PS5 they
They
do.
usually
Bloodborne
announce their
2. Who
games
knows?
like a year in advance, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
at least in the past.
They did the E3 and then it came out
Yeah.
with Sekiro. Yeah.
So,
Cool, man. I think we'll shut this one down here.
yeah, those are our thoughts on
Yeah.
Sekiro and Bloodborne. Eternal games in terms of their themes, but definitely susceptible to being perfected in terms of their mechanics and matter.
Absolutely. There's always improvements to be made in the genre and the games.
In terms of the matter specifically, you can always be a better painter, even if the thing
Mhm.
you're painting will remain the same, right? Like, yeah, it's a good principle to carry forward, I think, in making much of anything.
Right on.
Yeah. That's it for today. This has been Mike and Alex at Green Dragon CVR. Have a wonderful evening.